Hey, Craig.
It's all on you, it's all on me. Can't you see? It's all on you, it's all on me. You and me, can't you? It's all on you, it's all on me.
Hey, Craig. Right or wrong, we don't care. Win or lose, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care. We don't care.
Hey Jeff, are you feeling rested? We had our bye week, and we're ready to go. You know, we got in the film room, we corrected things that we've been doing wrong. I'm hoping for fewer ums and you knows going forward. You know. Oh wait, shit. Sorry.
Did a little self-scouting. Recognize that I say okay a lot. I just did it again. I had a so you know, like when you're a teacher, you know this because you did student teaching. Like you get people that, you know, come into your boss basically comes into your classroom and observes you, right?
Yeah.
And this is like, I don't know, man, probably my second or third year of teaching. So at this point, almost 20 years ago, had an administrator come in to observe me, and she, she was wonderful. She was a sweet lady. She was great. But she let me know that I have a tendency to fill dead air with okay. And she's like, when you're talking to the kids, you know, every time you kind of pause and are moving to another thing, you kind of go, okay. And I was like, wow. And then like for like the next month, all I could imagine was like every time I would stop, I'd be like, okay. And I'd be like, oh shit. Like I said it again, you know, and it's just over and over and okay. Finally, I just got over it and was just like, whatever, man. That's what I do. That's how I check in with the kids to see if they're getting it. It's just my thing. It's just my thing. So I'm no longer
who you are.
Self-conscious about it.
Can't change who you are.
That's right. You can't change me.
Exactly, because we are 225 episodes into this. This is Podcast versus Everyone, episode 225. Wow. That is a quarter of a way to 900. Incredible.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes, that's right. But yeah, I, of course, am Craig Powers, and with me, as usual, is Jeff Newser. And Jeff, obviously, the Boise State game was a week and a half ago at this point. We wanted to record last week, we just didn't get around to it. Shit happens, but we took our bye week, and we don't want to focus too much on the Boise State game because honestly, one, it sucks to talk about losses. Two, we're more going to talk about it in the context of what it means for the rest of the season. So Jeff, you know, that was kind of a downer on what had been a nice fun start to the year, 4-0. I guess, how do you feel after how that game went? Are you afraid that we are in for something similar to last year after a 4-0 start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super afraid of that. Like, I obviously there are parallels, right? Like, you know, the fact that 4-0 and then lose number 5. Number 5, you know, coming on the road and being a little bit of a stinker of a performance, right? Fourth quarter, kind of a fourth quarter collapse. That's what happened to UCLA last year. So you know, sort of all these parallels. And then also the week before the game, there were maybe some warning signs. You know, last year it was the game against Oregon State. Now, Oregon State was pretty good, but also like, you know, sort of another narrow escape. And then, you know, and then this year it was that San Jose State game. So obviously, you know, some parallels, but, you know, what I wrote about after that Boise State game was that I honestly take more positives away from it than negatives. And so much of that had to do with the fact that, we talked about it before the game. We talked about Ashton Genty before the game. By the way, we weren't sure how to pronounce his name at that point. We definitely know now how to pronounce his name because we will put some respect on that name. Not that we didn't know how good he was coming in, but it was also like, you always hope that your team is the one that, does a good job. And to be honest, we did a lot of things right. We had hands on him. There was a stretch there of 7, 8, 9 carries, something like that, where he, had a total of 30 yards or something. He was under 3 yards a carry for a big long stretch from the end of the first quarter.
The big run to the
quarter.
Yeah.
And then after that, then of course the half ends with a couple of big runs again, not huge runs, but 15, 20-yard runs. And you just realize he's just so damn hard to get to the ground, and it's not just us, it's everybody else. And so I kind of look at, I'm more, this, and our listeners, regular listeners would know this, you and I are much more process oriented people. Results matter, obviously. We go to the games and we cheer the results, and results are ultimately what matters. But if I'm thinking what matters going forward, I'm thinking process. And I saw a lot of good things in that game. Now there were a couple of concerning things, but I saw a lot of good things where I saw, John Mateer do a lot of awesome stuff throwing the ball. I saw the defense in position to bring Genty down. They just couldn't do it because nobody does, right? I think all those things are positive, and they speak well to where the team's going forward. I didn't feel like they were flat. I didn't feel like that game against UCLA last year where it sort of was okay, they had the bye and they had 2 weeks to kind of, for lack of a better term, sniff their own farts for a couple weeks, and then go down to UCLA, and UCLA sort of smacked them around. I didn't feel like this was flat at all. Did you?
No, I didn't feel like it was flat. I just felt like they played a really good team that was well prepared, honestly, that had an easier stretch coming in. They had a bye, Portland State, and then us. We had just emotional game after, we had emotional game, short week that turned into an emotional game, all in a row. And I think at some point, really after Ginty had that last ridiculous run that broke them, because it was a 1-score game at that point, that they just it broke them. Now we did. I think they might have come back and scored, but it was no. That one was the last death. No, it was because they made it a 2-score game when WSU went for it, fourth on their own territory, and that didn't work. And then but WSU did rebound from that. They got a touchdown to start the fourth quarter, and they were in it. They had a third down. They looked like they could have stopped him. They didn't. And then he runs for just an absolutely ridiculous touchdown run. He had 2 guys on his back for the last 10 yards. It was just insane.
Oh yeah.
He broke about
well, there
6
was,
tackles on the way.
There was a thing on Twitter where I was like, this guy is insane. And then Aaron Polivoy used to write for us at Coug Center. He did a little screen grab at the part where it's him and there's 5 guys around him. And that's at the line of scrimmage. And it's okay, somehow I got out of this. And then I screen capped it at the end where it's I don't even remember which defensive back it was, but basically jumps on his back at the 10-yard line and ends up getting carried all the way into the end zone. It's just what the fuck ever, man. I don't know how you.
And honestly, that was Boise State's Super Bowl. We weren't going to match their intensity in that game. I don't think we were going to be able to do that. The big concerns for me, the offensive line got whipped. They got crushed by Boise State. And if you're sitting there thinking, how the heck is Boise State's defensive line so much better than ours? I think it's a fair question. But it is. They definitely are, and they killed our offensive line. But yeah, the positive thing, John showed consistent accuracy. Now his decision making sometimes I think is still the thing, and I think that Boise State kind of banked on, if we make him throw these short passes over and over again, he may make a bad decision because he does throw like at least one interception every game, it seems. So, and we saw, he obviously had a real bad interception to end that first half. We saw on the first drive of the second half that went a long ways and then ended. He actually had a wide open receiver underthrew it, but he really didn't need to throw it. He had about 15 yards of green in front of him, would have put him probably close to first and goal. So he's still a redshirt freshman quarterback, and he's gonna make those mistakes. But I think it was positive that his completion percentage was higher. Like he actually was more accurate with his balls more consistently. One thing is concerning, Boise State obviously wanted to stop him from getting those ad lib yards. Like his two best runs were on like designed runs, and but those off script yardage wasn't there for the most part, and honestly was mostly negative because he took some really bad sacks. Like that, like some Russell Wilson level, like ran backwards forever, and that part was frustrating. Now, I talked to some Fresno State podcasters. You should go watch it. It was really good. But they asked me about, that was Boise State was blitzing and stuff, and yeah, they were. But the most concerning thing was that Boise State didn't really need to blitz to get pressure, and it was really impacting the running game and the passing game. Are we going to play a defensive line that good again? I don't think so. Maybe in a bowl game, but that's still like going forward. Teams are obviously going to hone in on trying to limit John's ad lib yardage because he's got a ton of that this year, and I think that they're going to try to keep him inside the pocket as much as possible. But will the other teams have the athleticism and skill to do that? We'll see. But it's positive to me that he was able to, even often under pressure, make quick decisions and hit guys in stride on short yardage that could turn into 7, 8, 9 yards routinely, and that was positive. The negative sacks, he's got to be better about that, and I hope they worked on that with him. But I think that's going to be part of the game with him. He's going to think he's going to make a play, and so that's going to happen sometimes. It just happened way too much against Boise State. But if I'm looking at the season in a whole, I feel like his passing has come along. It's been better throughout the year. And he's going to play worse defenses going forward than he has played. Yes. Boise State, Washington, those are the best defenses he's going to play all year. And so that's positive that he was fine against both those teams and actually made plays against both those teams. And the same thing with the offensive line. I think they were shuffling it too much. They had, honestly, sometimes with offensive lines, cohesion is more important than talent, and I think we learned that in the last couple weeks. Yeah, I think
so. Yeah, Dickert alluded to the fact that maybe they need to hone in on something consistently. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if correlation doesn't always equal causation, right? Right. So I don't know if the, changes of working in, Fa'amoe, if that was, kind of upset the apple cart. And for the most part, I mean, they were really only changing one guy. They didn't, as far as I know, they didn't take Hilborn and move him inside. I think they just sort of like pulled him and put Fa'amoe at right tackle and just kind of kept everything else the same, which, I think in general is usually a pretty good strategy, right? You're only changing one part instead of two. And okay, so that should help with continuity. But I mean, I'll be honest, to my untrained eye, Fa'amoe he just doesn't look ready. and again, maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I'm not an offensive line expert. But it looked like a couple times he just, like maybe the protection wasn't right. Maybe he wasn't in the right spot. He kind of maybe got beat a little bit. So we all know how talented he is, but he's coming off, a major reconstructive knee surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough. That's really, really tough, especially when, practicing along the way is not maybe is not maybe something you can do. So I don't know. I'm really curious to see who the starting 5 guys are. I think their best 5 is maybe Fa'amoe at right tackle, but also Hilborn on the inside instead of Tialavea. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what they do. I'm hopeful that the bye week provided an opportunity for them to sort of like you always hope that you reset a little bit. And I think that's the one unit I think where you needed that more than really any other was an opportunity to say, all right, these are our guys. We're going to rep these guys together. We're going to drill the shit out of the stuff they're going to face. And then we're going to be ready and we're moving forward with these 5 from now on. And I hope that's it. I'm glad you mentioned Mateer because, I just I'm in love with what he did. And I know, he had the terrible interception. I know he had the bad sacks, but it's like, okay, so, I mean, these are all like things that, hopefully he learns from. I mean, he's growing in different areas as we go. I mean, there was a point at the very beginning of the year, maybe the second game, where we were like, I mean, is this guy ever going to complete 60% of his passes? Is that something we should expect?
He was 9 of 19 against Texas Tech. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is this something we should expect, or is this guy actually just a 55% passer who does a bunch of damage with his legs, which can be super valuable? Like, that's like, I'm not throwing shade at that. I'm like, that is a different way of doing things, but you can do it that way, but so to see him evolve and then also maintain some level of explosiveness. I mean, his yards per attempt in this game was like 8, I think. Like that's really good. And so, it's not like they were completely, Boise State was completely taking away all of his, all of the, chunk passing plays. We were definitely still getting some when we're moving the ball. They just sort of took a page out of Jake Dickert's defensive playbook and said, all right, we'll let you move, but we're going to give this, shell coverage. We're going to have lots of deep safeties. And when push comes to shove, we know he's going to take an ill-advised shot to the end zone and we're going to be ready for it. And that seems to be kind of what, or either that or we're going to get a sack. And I guess they felt good about their chance to get sacks, but I tend to think the sacks are not, I don't know. Like, I don't see that as something repeatable. I think honestly, he just was unfortunate scrambles each time where it's like, in another game, maybe a guy's not there when he moves, but in this game, a guy happened to be right there. So I don't know. I'm not down at all on him after that performance. I mean, maybe if he was in his 3rd year of starting and he did that, but man, this was game 5. I am beyond thrilled at what he has done this year and the way he has grown. And, he is he's really, really good. And I'm really, really glad we have him. And I mean, I don't know how we do it, but it's like, man, there are some schools, like you look at like a Wisconsin or whatever, like how hard they struggle just to find one fucking quarterback. And we had 3 of them on the roster last year between Cam and Mateer and Emmett Brown. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. So on the topic of that, and if we're looking at going forward, we're 5 games into the year. What is this team? We kind of know mostly what this team is at this point. And we know that they've played the hardest parts of their schedule. I think at Fresno is nothing to shake, it's not an automatic win for sure. That again, this is going to be their Super Bowl. I think a lot of teams WSU plays the rest of the year is going to be their Super Bowl.
I think it's pretty safe to say almost all of them.
But this offense, I feel very good about the rest of the season. This offense has been very good by any metric. They're a top 30-ish, top 20-ish level offense by any advanced metric. In terms of explosiveness plus efficiency on EPA, They're 19th. Success rate 46th, which, when you're explosive, you don't need the success rate as much. But 46 is good when you have a quarterback that largely had been running 50% most of the year, and you're still rolling at a 42% success rate. They are 15th in points per drive nationally. There's just so much good stuff. They are 30th in the Fremo Efficiency Index, which is good, like a drive-based efficiency measurement. Let's see, I don't know. I don't need to really name anything else, but like honestly, they have they've been good when they run. They've been good when they pass. They've been good in just a lot of areas. They've been very good in early downs. That sets up for good success rates in later downs. This has been a very good offense, the best offense that we've had under Jake Dickert. And that's really exciting. And I think in this schedule that they have left, it's okay to think like they could drop like 40 points a game the rest of the way. Yeah. I'm not saying they score 40 every game, but maybe they score 56 against Hawaii. They could still put up 35 to 42 against Fresno State. This is a very good offense. I'm very excited about that going forward. With John and Wayshawn, we're getting Carlos Hernandez back. Obviously, Dylan Payne got hurt, but Javinsky Schlembecker is coming back to be that short yardage back. So there's a lot of guys in place. Obviously, having more depth on the offensive line. Hopefully, over the they kind of figured their shit out there. But again, like I don't think we're going to play the elite as good of a defensive line as we've faced, against UW and against Boise State. So I feel really good about where this offense is at, and the fact that John Mateer is improving in his first year as a starter. It feels like he is. It feels like he's adding tools as he goes along. I just this offense could just be really fun in the last 7 games.
Yeah, it's very exciting to think about as Jake Dickert, I think, wanted a high-powered offense when he got hired, right? And one of the things that I know that I was worried about when he got hired was like, oh man, defensive coach, are we going to like do the defense thing? Like, are we, no. And obviously that was not the case, right? He goes out, he gets Eric Morris. Like he's trying to, create an explosive high flying offense. And, it's sort of flashed at times, the last couple of years, but consistency, has been pretty hard to come by. And this year seems like, the potential is there. And then, reinforcements are coming, right? So like Carlos Hernandez, supposed to be back this week. I assume he's not, going to play a full load or whatever, but still that's another weapon, that you bring in to complement, Kyle Williams and Chris Hudson. And then, apparently Josh Meredith is fucking awesome now. So, it's like you add another weapon to it. And then, the bye week, I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, they played some really, physical, intense games. And, so a week off, a week to recharge, a week to let your body go. Wayshawn Parker, right? True freshman, has looked really good, but also like, it's his first go round getting whacked that many times, by teams that really hit. So, I'm super, super thrilled about the offense going forward. I think you're right on with that the potential is there for it to be very, very good. Do you feel like that way about the defense? I didn't think I do. So what are your thoughts about the defense going forward? Because I see positives, but I see just kind of some major almost maybe debilitating weaknesses that teams have started to pick on.
One thing that could so if I'm going to name the stats for the say similar stats for the defense as if for offense, when we're talking about EPA, they're not that bad. 51st in that, kind of slightly below like an average good team. But it's the success rate. And we know like Dickert's offense has always been this way: bend, don't break. They've just been bending too much. Success rate is 82nd overall. It's bad on both on passes and runs. Their points per drive is 104th in the country.
Yeah, that's not good.
Like that's not good. And especially with the offensive time being quick scoring, and if you're giving them that many drives, they're going to give up points. And so they've been put in some bad places. They're 100th in field position, so that doesn't help. But here's where the breaking is not helping. Jeff, you and I have talked in the past about Eckel rate. We'll just say it's kind of similar to like a scoring opportunity measurement. Basically, it's more of like when you're kind of inside the 40 more than inside the 20. And it also it's there's some other contextual things, but whatever. They're 109th in that. They're letting teams score too much when they're getting
drives too much. Yeah.
What's that?
Letting them finish their drives too much, which of course goes, hand in hand with, the breaking, but after bending situation. But what's funny is like they had a really good game in that way against Washington, right? So like they didn't
thought
do
they
that
were
in
on
the
track.
Apple Cup, but yeah. And then obviously
since.
the last 2 weeks it was bad. The thing that seemed to kind of be the the thing that sort of stood out to me as the one sort of troublesome sign is we are just getting killed from the slot. We are getting annihilated from the slot, and I try to make it a practice not to call out individual guys, but. So I won't do that here, but the folks who are playing nickel and strong safety, who are generally responsible for that area of the field, are having a really, really tough time, like a really, really, really tough time. And that was where San Jose State did most of their damage in that game. They put Nash inside a ton. And he just went to work.
That's where Washington did most of its damage.
And that's where Washington got its explosive plays from, right? They lined their guy up in the slot, and he just kind of went vertical. Not quite as much, obviously, against Boise because they didn't
need to.
Yeah, they didn't need to. But they did, some of the damage they did was, again, out of that slot position. I don't know how, like... There doesn't seem to be like a really ready fix for that, other than to say, okay, hopefully we're playing teams now that maybe don't have quite as explosive of athletes in that spot. But, a good offensive coordinator can scheme it up so that, they get guys one-on-one singled up there, the guys that have the most trouble covering. And that seems to be, ever since Washington, that seems to be largely what teams are trying to do against the defense. And, we're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback.
Yes.
Just, with 4 or even with 5. When you put all that together and you give the quarterback, enough time, it's tough to stay with those, quick little guys. And, so that part concerns me. Maybe Colson helps a little bit. Ethan O'Connor, has been kind of up and down, right? And so maybe Colson being around helps steady that out just a little bit too on the outside. So
yeah, so
I think the big thing is with Dickert, with the bend but don't break. It's like don't give up big plays, right? Like the whole idea is don't give up the huge play over the top that kills you, and we have not stayed away from those.
Yeah. That's been the problem, and obviously. Ginty contributed to that in a different way than we're used to. But also San Jose State had a big run as well. And so there's been some issues. I think, a lot of it, you mentioned the pass rush, and the defensive line is a big concern. Just not being able to generate negative plays really makes it tough to do that bend don't break. Like it's you really rely on like, okay, we're letting them get downfield, but then we get that one negative play and that sets them off, and then they're punting or they're kicking a field goal. and that's where you're at. But when you're not getting those negative plays, that hurts you a lot, and so that's my concern. And if the defensive line like was at a bit like sacking the quarterback at even like an average level, which I mean honestly they weren't even doing last year. This would be like, I think the defense would be plenty good for them to run the rest of the table, but the fact that they are not doing that, you just think like any level of quarterback can eventually find guys open if they're not getting touched.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter how good your back end is. So that's concerning. So hopefully that maybe playing against non-Boise State, that they'll get some more pressure. I don't know. I still think, they didn't get much, they didn't get a sack against Portland State. They didn't get one against Texas Tech till the very end. I don't think they had a couple against Washington, so that's a little bit positive. But yeah, that's my biggest concern going forward is that front, that defensive front, and any challenges they have, because honestly, like there was a couple plays against UW where they exploited the out of the slot, where if the pressure just got home a little quicker, those plays don't even happen. He doesn't have time to throw it 45 yards downfield. So that's it. But again, they're having to often blitz to get that pressure, and that's concerning. So hopefully some of those guys can win more. But I'm not really banking on it because it hasn't been something that's happened the last couple of years, even when we had outside of, a couple really, really talented dudes last year. But yeah, I don't know. Like we'll see against the schedule they have remaining, how much it's going to impact. Like there's some not so great teams. I think Fresno's offense has struggled quite a bit. If we want to transition to start talking about Fresno, which I think we should do.
Yeah.
So since we already talked about Wazoo defense, let's talk about Fresno offense. They have not been great. They've put up some points in some games, but they've had some real bad games, and their quarterback is throwing a pick every like 19 passes, basically.
Yeah.
And so, but his yards to attempt are okay, 8 yards in attempt, so he's making plays. But that's, if you put pressure on a guy like that, he's probably going to throw picks. They have a bunch. They have three. They don't have like that primary receiver. They got 3 different receivers, and they do spread the ball around a lot. And they do have a guy named Magdalena that looks pretty talented. He's averaging 22 yards a catch, and he's got 4 of their 8 passing TDs. So there are some guys that Fresno could definitely exploit that the middle of the WSU defense the way others have that slot position. So that is concerning. Their rushing attack though, we are not facing an Ashton Jeanty by any fucking imaginable stretch this weekend.
Nope.
They literally like they have 2 guys that have accounted for 108 of the carries, and neither one of them is is not even close to 4 yards a carry. They have one freshman running back that's at 21 carries. He's leading the way at that 4.33 yards a carry. So I don't expect them to be able to run all over WSU by any accounts, especially if WSU is as sound as they were against Boise. It's just they can actually tackle these guys, and that'll be good. But that also tells me, because of like, if you look at so many guys, when I looked at Boise State, Ginty had big yards per carry numbers, but so did like every other running back. And so it was like, okay, their offensive line is really good.
Right.
But if I'm looking at this, that tells me offensive line not great because like none of the running backs are doing well, and so I think WSU can has a chance to control at least on the line of scrimmage, but I do expect Fresno to throw the ball to primarily throw the ball against us. They're kind of even on the year, but I think they'll see an opportunity to throw the ball more because that's going to be their bread and butter. And honestly has been their most productive, more productive side of their game. But yeah, so I any other thoughts to add on like, how do you feel about defense in this game? Could they bounce back?
I mean, I hope so. And that was, by the way, the interceptions, Mikey Keene's interceptions were sort of the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, okay, 66%, 67% completion. Yeah, okay, great. Almost 300 yards a game, Pat. Wow, okay, good. 8.1 yards per attempt. Yeah, that's good. Even, against Michigan, 6.5, but 7.7 against UNLV. All right. And then I looked and I was like, whoa, 6 interceptions in 5 games. Now, the thing about that is like, okay, interceptions are largely and almost entirely in the hand of the quarterback, right? Like, you can only pick the ball off if the quarterback throws it where you can catch it as a defense. Obviously, that doesn't go for every interception, but, certainly most of them. And, when you look back, or when I look back here at, his previous years, I mean, last year he did throw 10 interceptions last year. So that was, he was throwing, little under 1 a game last year. They went to a bowl game, so a little under 1 a game, but that's still pretty high, but not super high. Certainly not the running out, over 1 a game that he's doing right now. When we go back to 2022, he was at UCF. Now he didn't play a whole lot that year. And that's, I'm sure what led him to transfer, but he only had 1 interception in 83 attempts. And then the year before that, when he was their regular starter, he only had 6 interceptions and 272 attempts. So all of that kind of makes me wonder, like, is he truly interception prone? Is he just like, having not watched the games, right? I don't know kind of what the circumstances were around the interceptions. I'm a little more concerned about the fact that the other stuff, right? The other indicators, the yards per attempt. And now a lot of that got jacked up against Sacramento State. You mentioned the wide receiver. He had 230 yards in that game. So almost half of his yards this season came in that one game against, the FCS opponent. So, but still, gives me pause a little bit that, he does complete a high percentage of his passes. He does, on the whole, the offense is, maybe not ultra explosive, but certainly maybe average to above average in terms of explosiveness, yards per attempt, that sort of thing. What if he doesn't throw the ball to us? Right? Like, that's the part that makes me go, as we kind of think about what might happen.
So the positive side of, I think they are a bit of explosive, but their success rates are really bad. They're 103rd in rushing success rate, 84th in passing success rate. So that's maybe which is kind of weird considering their quarterback throws his hitting 66%. That their success rate offensively would be low. That might. Their passing is, I guess their passing is 51st. Their rushing is 103rd. They're 84th overall. So
which would make sense, right? Like if you're constantly in 2nd and 10, and then maybe you pick up 4 yards, that's still not successful, right? Now you're at 3rd and 6. It's not, your success rate isn't ticking up at that point. So I definitely think like the passing game is what to be wary about here, and that if they're trying to run the ball, I think that'll be good for us. I don't think that they're going to do that. I think they're going to recognize that WSU's own weakness isn't necessarily running. I think Ginty jacked up some of those numbers last week. But I think, I expect them to try to move the ball through the air, possibly short, quick throws, get some easy yardage in lieu of
trying to run the ball up the middle. But you know what? They have ran the ball quite a bit this year, so maybe that they're just thick-headed about it enough, and
just committed to
fingers crossed on that, to be honest. But overall, they there's nothing that like stands out from them as like a really strong offense, because they can be successful. They have a decent success rate in passing, but their EPA is not good, and that tells me it's not been very explosive.
Yeah.
And so that sounds good to me. I worry about explosive teams against against Wazoo, because what we said earlier is that, you know, that they've been giving up more explosive plays than they should. Even though still they've been decent at that until GT messed it up, but that really is the Achilles heel. Like that throws a wrench if they give up a 40-yard pass or something, or a long touchdown. That throws a wrench in everything they're trying to do. If they can kind of keep Fresno at what they've been doing, I feel good about this game. And honestly, WSU's off defense overall has been kind of roughly average. So I think that there's something they could do. I know that they've been bad the last couple of weeks, but you know, maybe a week of refreshing and playing maybe a less talented offense will be really good for them.
Yeah. And I think one other thing that I want to point out, both teams are coming off a bye. So perhaps it sets up for some supreme weirdness as both teams try to take advantage of whatever tactical advantage that might provide for them, or whatever they think it does.
Fresno's definitely going to run some trickery. Like I would expect like a surprise onside, or, you know, stuff like that. Like I think we're going to see that in this game.
Yeah.
I think we're going to definitely see some weirdness for sure. You know, halfback pass type, wide receiver pass, something like that. You know, like
oh boy, because we have definitely never been burned on that. We definitely always sniff those things out.
Yeah,
for sure.
So when WSU has the ball, I think I'm feeling pretty good about that as well. Fresno State is 92nd in success rate against. They are against the pass, 56 against the rush. WSU has not really relied too much on success rate in the rush to be successful, to be honest, that much this year. They kind of just rely on getting an explosion out of the running game, which is funny compared to, you know, what we're used to. But overall, like Fresno's, you know, pretty decent in limiting big plays. They in the rush and the pass, and I would expect them to really be trying to limit Mateer in his big plays. So they're going to focus on that. They're going to do what Boise did. They're going to make him beat them with his arm. And so hopefully, having another guy in the ranks, a wide receiver, more guys open, a talented guy in Hernandez. Hopefully he can back and make some plays. But, WSU has some real good receivers that could potentially make a team pay for doing a strategy where they're focusing a lot on Mateer, potentially loading the box and trying to prevent anything from there. If he can pass out of the pocket, I think he's going to have an opportunity to make, really succeed and make, if he can hit that 65% completion percentage like he had last week against Boise, I think they could really be successful in this game.
Yeah, and I think that the receivers will, find more space to operate as well, not just in terms of getting open, but like, yards after the catch, things like that. I just think that, we just have to remind ourselves a lot, I think, that Boise State is good, right? Like, now, I wasn't super impressed with their defense leading up to the game. And also in the game, to be honest, like, I didn't think their defense was super impressive either. I mean, we talked about all the ways in which it
was a negative plays.
Yeah, did good things and then did a very bad thing, right? That sort of destroyed everything they were trying to do. the teams that we're going to be facing, again, this doesn't mean that every game's a guaranteed win or anything stupid like that, but it's like, it's just not going to be the same. And so,
well, and I think Boise, leading up to that game was one of the best in the nation at sacking the quarterback. And they showed that Fresno has 6 sacks total all year.
Yeah.
So,
this should not be terribly difficult to keep Mateer fairly clean. And the thing is, when you do that also, if you can keep him clean and coverage is good downfield and he's dancing and he's looking, those are the times when you get the big chunk plays with the legs, right? Like the big chunk plays with the legs don't typically come when you are scrambling for your life, right? Like it's when, okay, you're in the pocket, you're moving, you're looking, you're moving, you're
receivers
looking.
Receivers are downfield.
There. Receivers are downfield now. The linebackers are all kind of looking around. They're not sure, who they should be covering. Scramble drill initiates. All of a sudden there's 10 yards of green grass in front of you. And so I think that, we'll probably see a fair amount of that in this game. If I guess like the inverse of what you just said is if we do give up a ton of pressure, that's like sound the alarm. like
yes,
it's emergency time. It's like we have a major problem if this is the game where they really can't keep Mateer clean. So, again, it's not a guarantee that the offense is going to be amazing, but at the very least, we should be able to count on, the quarterback having time to throw and being able to buy time with his legs without being under constant pressure.
And by the way, 5 of those 6 sacks were against New Mexico State.
Oh, New Mexico State.
Yeah. I would say Sacramento State probably has better offense than New Mexico State.
Probably. That's probably true. Yeah.
But
New Mexico State's horrendous.
Yeah, they're New Mexico State's given up 15 on the year, so they give up quite a few sacks. And so 5, they got 1 against Michigan, and they got 5. Michigan, who does not have a quarterback, and then they got 5 against New Mexico State. They got no sacks against Sacramento State, no sacks against New Mexico, no sacks against UNLV. So yeah, if we're giving up pressure in this game, that's a concern for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So Jeff, let's we've talked about it. I'm gonna put it on you first this week. What's your score prediction for Wazoo versus Fresno State?
I think it's a high scoring game. I think the Cougs win. I think the Cougs cover. I'm gonna go real high scoring. I'm gonna be like, this is like 45-38 Cougs. It's a wild one. Both teams, coming out. Cougs coming out off a loss. Fresno State coming out off a loss. Both team and both those losses, by the way, not sitting right with either team. So I think both teams are going to be super fired up. You mentioned, Fresno State's going to be looking at this as a pretty major deal with a team that's been in the Pac-12 coming into their place. Lots fired up, but I also think that, the Cougs are going to have some wrinkles up their sleeve. I don't know. That's maybe not the right expression, but you know what I mean? So they're going to be ready to go. I think that the offense is more or less unstoppable in this one. I think that, they do to Fresno basically what UNLV did, I think, to be honest. But I think that the Cougars defense is not quite on the level of the Rebels. And I think that, this is a game where we go, shit, he's not throwing the ball to the other team. And they're able to score some points. So I'm going to go 45-38 Cougs. They cover, take the over, and we walk out of Fresno State feeling pretty good overall with another win.
I'm feeling that we could put up points. I'm not going to go quite as high. I'm going to say, but I will say I think maybe I'm a little more bullish slightly more bullish on the defense. But I'm going Wazoo 38, Fresno State 28. Okay. So obviously counting them to cover, and I'm feeling good about this one. So that feels terrible. But yeah, but I will say sometimes Jeff and I pick the Cougs to win when we don't really know. But I do feel like Wazoo should win this game.
Yeah.
So yeah. Jeff, we have that pick in the bag. I think what better to do now and then talk about what we are drinking. So Jeff,
Yeah.
what are you drinking?
All right. Well, I have a beer from a little known brewery. You may have heard of it, called Holy Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna turn that into a bit. By the way, whenever
Where are they located?
I believe they're located in Seattle, Ballard, Inner Bay type area.
Inner Bay, not Ballard.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, it's like Ballard adjacent, like it's close enough. Anyway, all right. So this is the Citron Vert Citrus Light Lager. Have you had this one, Craig?
I have not actually.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. Now I'm feeling really good now that I've picked a Holy Mountain beer that Craig has not had. When it says light lager, they are not kidding. It is very light. It almost has like a sparkling wine kind of color to it, like a Prosecco champagne type color to it. Virtually no like head whatsoever when you pour it. And it is, if you like lime, and I do like lime, like gin and soda, gin and tonic with lime, like those are like, that's sort of my go-to when I'm doing mixed drinks. So I like lime quite a bit. This is very, very limey. The can has a picture of a skull with like sort of half the skull sliced off, and on the inside of the skull is a lime. So very appropriate. I'm not, at first I wasn't sure if I liked it. Because the lime is so strong. And I picked it tonight because it is Tuesday. We're recording on Tuesday, which of course is Taco Tuesday, around this house and probably like a lot of other houses. So that, all right, nice little lime lager, that'll be cool. And man, it's a lot, but I don't know. The more I drink it, your palate kind of gets used to it, and then it's very pleasing. So I don't know. It was interesting. It was definitely very interesting.
Yeah. Citron Vert means lime. I'm not. I think probably in French.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah. So it's probably Citron Vert or some shit like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you have to go when you say it. So I guess they're just full on going for a lime soda beer. It kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am drinking, it's fresh hop season. They just had we're kind of on the tail end of it, but they just had the Fresh Hop Ale Festival in Yakima. Cheers to Tacoma Brewery Sig for taking home Best in Show. Way to
That's
go,
awesome.
Tacoma. Way to go. My friend Jeff, who is the head brewer there, I texted him. Said, way to go, buddy. Yeah, that was very proud of them. Sig makes good beer. I'm not surprised. I am drinking just a collaboration beer from two kind of hop kings here. So one thing to mention when it's fresh hop season, when it's hop harvesting season, they call it the green rush. And it means it's when brewers from basically every brewery in the country are coming to Yakima for hop selection. And so over the course of, the end of August and through September, there's just like if you go to Sports Center in downtown Yakima, or like Single Hill or something, you'll probably run into brewers from like all around the country. And so when this happens, the Yakima breweries like Single Hill, Varietal and Sunnyside, even some of the Seattle breweries get in on this too. They do collabs with these breweries that are coming in to pick out beers, which I think I've mentioned before. A collab means like one guy's brewing the beer and the other five are drinking. But there is some collaboration on the recipe of the beer and what they're going for. So this is Green Rush Fresh Hop IPA from Balebreaker, collaborating with Russian River, which is just like, obviously, if you follow me, Russian River makes the best clean IPAs. I love them.
Yes.
Blind Pig, Pliny the Elder, and Pliny the Younger, obviously, and then all their other beers. I love their clean IPAs. Mind Circus, they're hazy. Not a huge fan of, but that's because they should just stick to the damn clean IPAs. So they literally said the annual influx of brewers and beer lovers to the Yakima Valley to search out the best fresh hops is the Green Rush. And so we've got a front row seat from our family hop farm. Bill Breaker, obviously, famously was built on a family hop farm. They partnered with the legendary Russian River to create a fresh hop IPA that tastes like striking gold, fresh hop gold. This fresh hop West Coast IPA features freshly picked homegrown Simcoe hops for vibrant aromas of grapefruit, peach, mango, and resin. This is amazing. This tastes almost like a Russian River IPA. Like they executed it in that way. Is so good. They made a ton of it, so you can find it places. Like I saw like stacks and stacks of it at Tacoma Boys. I wouldn't be surprised if they even get some at grocery stores because Bale Breaker is pretty big in grocery stores.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend if you see this beer, grab it. If you like West Coast IPAs, this is just a fucking killer fresh hop IPA. I drank about 8 fresh hop beers on Friday night I think it was Friday night. No, Saturday night. Not 8 by myself. My wife and I split 8. We did our own little fresh hop ale festival. And this is my favorite one. And I was glad I had another can, and I'm going to buy more of it. It's so good. I'm going to be sad when it's gone. I love fresh hop season. Always we are so lucky to be in this area. Like there's fresh hop beers made around, but like every brewery brews fresh hop beers. There's such a variety. Many brew like 5 or 6 or 7 of them. And we're seeing more and more like fresh hop lagers, fresh hop other styles, and those are great. So it's just really fun. Like it's just, you get this kind of a different taste, different experience, a more vibrant kind of hop flavor, kind of maybe some more vegetal kind of, it's just different. And I love it. I love this time of year in the Pacific Northwest. Definitely, I think people should come here to try all the fresh hop beers during this time, the same way they mecca to other areas for their beers at different stages of the year. But I love it. So yeah, check out Green Rush from Bale Breaker and Russian River. Delicious.
Yeah, I'll have to find it.
So yeah, I'm sure you can. So now that we've talked about I should have done a what is the brewery? Drew Brew beer, because Drew Brew is run by Gonzaga alums. I said I did a beer run by Husky alums, which is fine because we kind of own their brains this year. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But Drew Brew is run by Gonzaga alums, and Gonzaga. The big news in the last week and a half is Gonzaga is officially joining the Pac-12 conference, as in everything except football, obviously. And Jeff, you and I are the biggest damn Gonzaga haters in the world.
We are.
We are constantly hating on them for many good reasons. But as someone who wants, the best for WSU and the best for the Pac-12 conference, this is a home run. This is absolutely a great move, and I think Teresa Gold did a great job adding Gonzaga. I think it just brings up the stature of the company, or the company. Well, it is kind of a company. Stature of the conference, and I'm loving it, and I think it's going to have ripple effects that we are going to enjoy going forward.
Yeah, and I think that context matters here as well. Like I know when Washington State and Oregon State initially added, the 4 schools from the Mountain West. And it was like, okay, here's this first splash. Oh my gosh, everybody's so surprised and excited. All these possibilities, right? Or, like, okay, where do they go next? There's all these ideas. And it was at that point that Gonzaga was kind of floated. Like you started hearing rumblings that, hey, they might go for Gonzaga. And this was before the Brett McMurphy stuff and all that. This was like pretty early on. And my initial thought was, no, I hate that. Like, I don't want them in this conference. They don't play football. What the hell do I want them around for? And then, of course, as I said, context matters. Things change. Time changes. You go through what you go through for the next couple of weeks where, you're sort of rebuffed by the schools from the American with, Memphis and Tulane and USF and apparently UTSA, although, I've heard from at least one person that UTSA was actually never part of the equation, that they were just sort of like piggybacking on it to make it look like they were. But, when that happened and then, are they even going to be able to get a couple more teams from the Mountain West? Okay, they get Utah State. What's UNLV going to do? Okay, UNLV decides to stay. And, at this point, you're like, okay, well, you need something to sort of like shake it loose a little bit, because you're like, well, is the American, the Memphis, Tulane stuff, is that like set in stone? Is that forever? Or, could something change there? And then, Memphis AD comes out and says, basically, come get me, right? Like, make me a better offer and I'll jump. So at that point, you're thinking, okay, well, what do you need to tilt the scales? Well, adding Gonzaga helps tilt those scales, and really sort of like conceptually, I don't like the idea of giving a full share to a team that's not playing football. But also, I mean, I do think there's a world in which, the Gonzaga basketball brand, provides enough value for this particular conference to demand a full share. And, are they going to demand or be able to get a full share from the Big 12 or whatever else? No, right? Like they're not $30 million a year, branding, right? But are they $10 to $15 million a year branding? Maybe. Right. Especially if, maybe some of the rumors we hear about, like, the media rights with football and basketball maybe being split, and Turner, which of course holds the rights to, the NCAA men's tournament, Turner maybe wanting to dip into some college basketball after losing the NBA, all of a sudden, really building a premier basketball conference that becomes, maybe the flagship of, Turner, TNT, TBS, USA, that sort of thing. All right, now you just kind of go, all right, yeah, like there's some potential there. So I think, again, context matters, time matters. Of course, I will never like Gonzaga, but having them around to fill the the hate hole that was left in my heart by the departure of Washington definitely doesn't hurt.
I definitely think there is some value in that, like having rivalries in the league, and
yeah.
You know what, like I think it's good that like we're playing Gonzaga again because we're in the WCC this year, and so I think it's good we're playing them again, because it's like it's felt weird just hating them for not playing us, but and so it's good. Maybe they'll kick our ass. I mean, probably will, but who cares? Like UW kicked our ass and we hated the fuck out of them, so I don't care.
Yep.
But also, like, there's no guarantee that Gonzaga is going to be that forever. They're going to invest like they want to, but like even some of the North Carolina has had downs. Like there's a lot of premier basketball like schools that have downs, and so. But anyways, if Gonzaga fans like want to puff their chest and be like, "Well, we're helping you out," like honestly, we helped them out. We finally gave them a conference that would take them as a non-football member that is a legit basketball conference.
We put the whole fucking thing together, man.
We put literally Oregon State and Wazoo put this whole damn thing together, and we said, "Hey, Gonzaga, look, like you got like 6 NCAA tournament teams from last year in this damn conference already. Like, what do you like? Do you want to join? Or, yeah, 5, I think. You want to join? Like, join up. Come on. Now, what does that mean for Wazoo? Look, I don't want to get our asses kicked in this conference, because this is, especially if this attracts those American teams. You get a good basketball school like Memphis. And I think, a program like Tulane that wants to invest, in their athletics, you're gonna have to be better than you have been. Like obviously we saw emphasis and investment in it when they went out and fired Ernie Kent and got Kyle Smith. But honestly, on the NIL side, on our side, obviously that was some of the equation in Kyle leaving was, hey, I don't want to lose guys every single year. And he thought, not necessarily going to do that at Stanford. You're going to recruit freshmen. They're probably going to stay. But yeah, I hope it's like kind of a wake up call to the university and also the alums. Like, if we don't want to get embarrassed in this league, that's going to be a really good, like a top 4 or 5 basketball league in the country.
Yeah.
Like probably like a more consistently better than the Pac-12 has been in the last 10 years.
Yep.
We're like, WSU is going to have to dedicate resources to basketball. WSU alums are going to have to dedicate resources to basketball. Like, it's just going to happen because otherwise we're going to be left in the dust. Because honestly, right now we're rolling EWU South this year. It could be fine against a lot of the WCC schools, but if we're sticking with that going forward, that is not going to work.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of legit programs that we're going to be facing come 2026, 27. And I know that you and I want WSU basketball. I'm excited about, because some of our favorite mid-major like programs, San Diego State, Colorado State, like are in this league now. Utah State, that we've seen just have consistently good basketball, are in this league, and potentially Memphis. There's legit teams in this league, and it's not going to be super watered down. I want to be a part of that fun. I want to be a part of that good time of like really good basketball. So I really hope, one, that David Riley is it, or like I hope he's got it, and then I hope that the university and the community as a whole can embrace, WSU as a basketball school, because that honestly, in this new league, football will be good, but basketball is really where it can have a chance to like make a name for itself. And again, like, it would be really fun if WSU was a part of that. So let's build on the momentum of the last few years of Kyle Smith, and let's keep it going. If you stay at that level, like, that's great. Like, they'll do just fine. But I'm just worried that it's going to be hard to even stay at that level consistently. Having consistently top 70, top 60, top 50 team every year. But that's what they're going to have to do to be competitive. And
I mean, that's just to be competitive.
Yeah.
like that's not like that's not like win the league kind of stuff. I mean, that's like, okay, how do you even be just, good enough to not be embarrassing? I mean, the quality of the teams that are coming in, and then you have the, it's not just like the depth of quality overall. It's, you have the potential, 2,000-pound gorilla at the top with Gonzaga, which, as we know, is sort of what separates, a league from, potentially other leagues. And when we look at the Pac-12 over the last however many years, both in basketball, men's basketball and football, like, that was sort of part of the major issue, right? Like, that there just generally was not the team at the top that was good, year after year after year, that everybody was sort of aiming for. USC and football had kind of always been that for a long time. And then, of course, for the last 10 years or so was not that. And then in basketball, we went through some times where, Arizona has been that, or UCLA has been that. And that's been, fairly inconsistent. So the fact you got Gonzaga at the top, one of the biggest national brands that there is, right? I mean, honestly, I think, when you're talking national brands in basketball, you're talking UConn, Gonzaga, Arizona, Duke, I guess North Carolina still.
North Carolina, yeah.
You know, I mean, these are all the sorts of teams that are in that kind of conversation. You know, when you add a team like that to your league, I think that's nothing but good. So, yeah, I mean, I'll give Gonzaga fans a hard time for, and tease them a little bit for the fact they actually in the end needed us to do this for them. But overall, I'm pleased. I'm happy. I think this is good. I'm sure at some point in a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years from now, I'm going to be like, why did we ever invite these assholes? But for now, I'm pretty happy. So,
or we'll just go on a great streak of like upsetting them, and it'll just be really fun. Like,
yeah, that would be cool too.
Obviously, we're going to play Gonzaga 4 times in the next 2 years before this league even starts, and we're going to play them 2 years for as long as that league lasts. Which, who even knows, man? Who even knows?
Who knows?
Obviously, there's been all this talk of super conferences and stuff, and U of I have constantly warned this is not the end of it. This round of realignment is not the end of it. We got in 4 or 5 years, this is coming down the pipe again, and it may be even sooner if Clemson and Florida State get out of their grant of rights. But yeah, like this is gonna. So it's kind of funny putting this together, but I think what thing we talked about, if they can add a 2 or 3 more football schools and then stop there and just be small and wait for the next round, and then be that conference that is already good enough to be like, yeah, we'll absorb some of these Big 12 or ACC teams that need to, well, potentially Big 12, hopefully more likely, but we'll absorb some of these teams. Maybe we'll absorb some of the Pac-12 teams back because they've lost, everything else has exploded. Just be in that position to be able to take on teams without bloating to like 18, like the Big 12, Big 10, and 16 or 17, like the other leagues.
I think what you're seeing is the leagues that have gotten to that size, they're kind of boxed in a little bit right now, right? Like they just don't, they don't have the ability to be nimble or flexible. That really the only thing they can do is just keep adding. And, if you're the Big 10 or you're the SEC and you keep adding, that's probably fine. If you're the Big 12 and the ACC and you continue to add, I think that's not necessarily giving you, a ton of value. I mean, when you look at the Big 12 and you're like, oh, a couple weeks ago watching football, and like there were 3 games. I had a little quad box going on my TV with the YouTube TV, and it was like 3 of the games were between teams that two teams that were not in that conference last year. Not like 3 games where one of the teams was not in that conference last year. It was like 3 games where both teams were not in that conference last year. It was like, what in the fuck are we doing? I don't know. Like, this is so ridiculous. Oh
yeah, you had UCLA, Oregon, Big 10 conference game.
Yeah, Big 10 conference game. Actually, maybe UCF was in the Big 12 last year. I don't remember, but it was UCF, Colorado.
UCF was in the Big 12 last year.
Okay, so they were last year was their first year, but still, it was UCF, Colorado, and like I don't know, like Oklahoma and Texas or something. Like I don't know, it wasn't Oklahoma, Texas, but it was like Oklahoma and somebody. Anyway, it just was like, whatever, man, whatever. This is so ridiculous. I don't know. Like it sort of killed my will to care too much about what anybody else does, but I am interested in what the Pac-12 does. I do think that the silence right now is just an indication that I think they're talking to media partners. And there was a sense that they had, circled back around to the American. They were talking to the American teams, then all of a sudden things got real quiet. And to me, that indicates, I think Memphis at least, and probably Tulane also. I think Memphis is sort of the linchpin. Like I think there is a tacit understanding and agreement with those schools that, hey, if we can deliver a certain number, that they'll jump, right? Yeah. Like the thing that Scott kept, Ed Scott, the AD at Memphis, thing he kept saying kind of over and over was, hey, I can't make this move with the amount of uncertainty that I was presented with. It wasn't even so much just the cost overall. It was just like, it was the cost overall plus we don't know exactly how much this is going to be worth. Right. And so if you're a Mountain West school and you're leaving a $5 million a year media deal, it's pretty easy to see how this is sort of nowhere but up. Right. But if you're, if you're Memphis and your media deal is already about 10 million a year, I think that's what theirs is. And then you're incurring the cost. I think their leaving fee is like 25 million or something like that.
It's big.
Why in the fuck you'd ever agree to that? I have no idea.
No, man.
But no clue. But beyond that, it's just sort of like, okay, you better give me something that says this is like a $15 million a year deal so that I know what I'm jumping for. So I think that's kind of where we're at. And I think, I don't know how long that's going to take, a week or two, maybe, I would hope would be sort of the time frame. Although obviously it took, super forever last time. So, but they don't have that time frame this time.
Random throwing it out here for you. The Sacramento State is just a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah,
and they obviously they're committed to building a new stadium, and they have this Sac-12 plan. They want to be a Pac-12 team. I don't think the Pac-12 is going to want to bring on like a new FCS team. And I think maybe it'd be like Sac Mountain West or something. But holy shit, they got $25 million in NIL commitments.
Apparently.
And they said it was mostly from a local tribe. And I'm like, WSU, could you talk to some local tribes and see if we could
we got some
hook that up? Get the EQC casino on the unis. I don't care. Get the what's the one in Spokane? Northern Quest on the uni. That we got it on the Sounders unis. It's all good. Or not, maybe not on the uni, but on the field or something. Let's get the NIL rolling. That puts, like, honestly, that puts them at the level of like a lot of Big Ten schools, like $25 million in your NIL.
Yeah.
That's more than I've heard UW has. And so that's a huge number. So, and that would enable them, if they jumped up to FBS, to kind of get good real quick. It's obviously they're all their other sports and stuff you got to worry about. But, maybe in the future, Sacramento State is a viable player. It just seems like their aspiration may be Pac-12, but I don't think that's going to happen right away. I don't think we would want to take on a team that has like a 2-year grace period and stuff like that, and all that, and also a team that doesn't have an established, presence. But something to watch. It'll be fascinating to watch. Honestly, we've seen that Sacramento, when it bands together as a community, can make some really poor financial decisions, but also save their teams and benefit their sports teams in an incredible way. Referencing, of course, them saving the Kings from moving to Seattle when it seemed like the Kings were definitely moving to Seattle. Like it seemed that it was like pen on paper happening. But yeah. And then now they built an expensive arena and they got their Kings, and it took a while, but they finally made the playoffs. But
good for them, I guess.
Good for them, I guess. So Jeff, obviously are in this 2-year waiting period of the Pac-12 coming back as a full-fledged conference. Are there other teams outside of football are playing in baseball and another one are playing in the West Coast Conference? So we have soccer and volleyball are in the thick of West Coast Conference play now. Volleyball, since we've last talked, had a big win. I think it was over. Is it San Diego? On the same night as the Boise State game, And then they had a real gritty win over Portland, and then lost to Pepperdine. But they're sitting at 3-1 in the conference. That was their first loss. So I will say, like, they look kind of like they can compete with the top Mountain West teams or West Coast Conference teams, but they're not the best team. But I think we'll see them have a pretty solid record in the league. And honestly, if they figure out a way to win out, like win most of their games, like they're still in the thick of like potentially pushing for the title. But there's some actually pretty good teams at the top of the West Coast Conference, if they found out, but they just beat one in San Diego. So that was tough. I watched the end of the Portland match. They almost got reverse swept, but they fought. They were down. I think it was 9-3 or something in the final set that goes to 15, and they came back and won. And then, but against Pepperdine, they couldn't put it together and lost in 4. But they have St. Mary on the road, St. Mary's and Pacific coming this weekend. I don't know how good either of those teams are, so I cannot tell you if they should win or not. But all the games are on ESPN Plus. If you have ESPN Plus, they're all on there.
Yeah.
So,
I am looking at the volleyball standings for the West Coast Conference, and it isn't you sort of alluded to this, but it's important to note like we're actually like in the West Coast Conference for these sports. Like it's we're eligible for like the auto bids and things like that. Like we are actually members of the conference for these 2 years for these sports. So they're currently tied at third at 3-1. You mentioned 3-1. St. Mary's 0-3, 4-8 overall. So that's definitely
probably a game they should get.
Probably one they should get. Yeah. And then Pacific is 1-3 in the West Coast Conference, so just ahead of St. Mary's. But they're 11-5 overall, which is sort of like kind of crazy. That meant they were 10-2 coming into conference place. I don't know.
They also played a lot. Yeah, they played a lot of non-conference games.
Yeah, they probably played a bunch of those like tournaments, right, where you go and you play 3 matches in 2 days, that kind of thing. So that would be my guess. But at any rate, yeah, those are 2 teams below them in the standings. So those are 2 teams I think you would hope they could get. Pepperdine sort of took care of business against them the other night, but otherwise they've showed, I think, pretty well considering they've turned over virtually the entire team except for Katie Ryan, right? And brand new coach. So not too bad. Not too bad.
And then soccer is on still struggling to put the ball in the net. They did score 2 against Pepperdine. They seem to, again, play their best against the better teams. At number 13, Pepperdine, they actually had a 2-1 lead and lost. It got a penalty kick that tied it up and then lost it late to number 13, Pepperdine. So they really play up, Yeah, they drew against number 7 Utah State at Utah State. So they really play up against these good teams. But then they come back and they play against teams that maybe they could beat, and they draw. They did squeak out a win against San Diego, and that's their lone win. They're sitting at 4-4-4 overall, 1-1-1 in conference play, and yeah, just this week they play. Let's see, St. Mary's and Portland, both at home on Wednesday and Saturday. So that would be probably when you're listening to us, that would be today. So if we're looking again at the standings, we got St. Mary's is tied with them 1-1-1. They're 4-5-2 overall. And then what was the other team? I said Portland. Portland obviously historically has had good soccer teams in the past, but they are also at 1-1-1. So it's kind of hard to tell. We're pretty early in the season, who's actually good. Oregon State leading despite having a
Yeah.
overall losing record is sitting at 2-0-1 and 7 points at the top, although points per match Santa Clara and Pepperdine be on top, but which is kind of a more interesting thing to look at sometimes. But yeah, so obviously at home you're hoping they can get some results here. Obviously do something more than draw. Put some, actually play like you do against the big teams. Put the ball in the net against some of these mid-level WCC teams, and maybe come out with 6 points out of this weekend at home.
And
that would
they
be
really
nice.
need that. They need that. I mean, if we're talking about getting back into the tournament, right? Like they sort of have missed out on most of their opportunities to get the kind of win that's gonna get the attention of the committee. If you're trying to get that at-large bid, now they could in theory get the automatic bid, which would be great, but also they're not totally in position to do that right at this point, having already lost to Pepperdine. But they could go on a run here, but it's got to start somewhere, right? St. Mary's, Portland, Gonzaga, that's 3 games they really ought to win. Like if they're serious about potentially making the tournament, those are 3 games that they ought to win. St. Mary's and Portland at home. Neither team great. St. Mary's is really not very good. Portland's fine. Gonzaga, not very good. And then you've got at Santa Clara. So if you can take care of business the next 3 games, Santa Clara is sort of one of those potential resume builders. They're 2-0 in the conference, 8-2-1 overall. That's going to be kind of the big one there. If you don't take care of business the next few games, then that one probably doesn't matter. But then you got San Francisco, Oregon State. Those are teams above you in the standings as well. And then Pacific to finish it off. I mean, there's a real chance to make some moves there with, the team. Pacific's, pretty bad. So, if you can get some stuff done here, then, you've got a chance. San Francisco, by the way, I misspoke. I was thinking volleyball. San Francisco's below them in the standings. So, yeah, but you got to take care of some business here. Got to take care of some business.
Yeah, they are 3-0-2 at home and 0-4-2 on the road. They have played some really tough road matches that kind of unbalances that. They've played They played of those 5 or 6 road matches. They've played number 2 Stanford, number 7 Utah State, number 13 Pepperdine. So they've had a real tough.
And they played all of them tough. Even Stanford, they played tough. Like I think Stanford got a goal pretty late to make that 2-0. But yeah, so
on top of that, they played at Georgia, at Purdue. That's 5 of the 6 road matches they've played have been like pretty tough matches.
The life of the WCC soccer team.
Yeah, I wonder if Gonzaga not going to have to in a couple of years not going to have to stack their non-conference schedule quite the way they have in the past. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adjust that. Because I know that they were kind of at the forefront of like the RPI when it was RPI of basically gaming the RPI. They were like so good at that because they had to just to kind of protect themselves in case they didn't win the league. So yeah, and now we've seen every team is gaming net and RPI and whatever,
and also not quite as easy to game. Like you can't just do it with creative scheduling.
Yeah. Not quite as easy. Great, Jeff. Nice to have football again this week. Excited to watch the Cougs again. And I'm excited that the Pac-12, we're seeing things happening, things moving. And I don't know, who knows when these potential TV numbers will come out and maybe lure some more of the top of the G5 to build this league. But yeah, Jeff, I guess with all that's left to say is go fucking Cougs.
Go fucking Cougs, Craig. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Vaccinated.
Get vaccinated.
Support your local